Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1541A, and today's date is April 10th, 2018, and the title of the episode is China and Russia Make Their Move, Slowly Shifting the Global Economy. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the next generation, called the millennials, they are going to have a very difficult time. The majority of them, well, they're coming of age. They'll be in the labor force by the mid-2020s, and their influence on American society is starting to be realized right now. And what I mean by that is they're carrying a lot of debt. And the most common form of debt for 18 to 34-year-old Americans is credit card debt. Approximately 75% of the millennial individuals have financial obligations, and they are pausing major life events because they're too broke. Think about this for a second. A lot of student loan debt, a lot of credit card debt. They can't find good jobs. They're finding low-paying jobs, and this is the next generation moving up. A quarter of millennials have racked up over $30,000 in bills, including 11% who have over $100,000 in debt. Only 22% of millennials are debt-free. Now, in a central bank boom and bust economy, each generation throughout the past century has experienced some form of deleveraging. So what happens next? Well, you guessed it. Millennials could be the next generation to feel the wrath of what happens when this whole system completely falls apart. And they'll feel it first during the beginning stages, and then it will spread to the rest of everyone else. Everyone else is a little bit more established. They won't feel the pain until a little bit later on. But millennials with a huge amount of debt, not making that much money, not a lot of money saved, they will feel this right off the bat. And when you start to look at this, you can see that this whole entire system has not allowed the younger generation to make it. Think about it. Go back to the 70s where people were getting raises. You saw inflation. This was the beginning of the central banking system. Everyone thought it was great. I mean, houses doubled in price. Salaries went up by double. Everything was going up. Today, everything is happening in the opposite way. Why? Because we're at the end of the cycle. That's the whole point of this. The central bank system has the beginning, a middle, and an end. We've gone through the beginning and the middle. We're at the end cycle. There will be no more boom and bust. There'll only be a bust. They've already made sure of this. They already knew that this was going to be the end. This is why they started printing like crazy. Yes, I know, pushing a button. This is what they do at the end stage. Look at all the central banks, go back in history, and just watch what they've done back then. Of course, they've taken it now to the 9th degree, and they're trying to keep the system alive. Now, what's very interesting, we're supposed to be in this incredible recovery. The central bank has cured pretty much everything. Corporations are saying everything is great. But of course, when we look through all the garbage and all the fake manipulated numbers they throw us, we can see that everything is not that great. What's very interesting is that Chapter 11 bankruptcies, they're up by 63% from a year ago. Now, think about this for a second. We're in this recovery, and all of a sudden, we're having these bankruptcies. Now, it's not just the brick and mortar meltdown anymore. It's spreading. New Chapter 11 bankruptcies in the U.S., they spiked 63% year over year in March to 770 filings, the highest number of filings for any month since April 2011, where there had been 789 filings. Now, when we look at this data from the American Bankruptcy Institute, we can see that the year-over-year jump of 299 filings in March is the second largest year-over-year jump for any month since the Great Recession. It is behind only the jump of 366 filings last December, which which had set a post-recession record. Now, bankruptcy filings, they are seasonal, and they usually peak around April along with tax season. So the March jump, it doesn't look really that great for April. And what we're seeing right now is that it's not improving. Everything is actually getting worse, and it's not just the brick and mortar. Now, if we go back in time between late 2015 going into late 2016, we had the oil bust Chapter 11 bankruptcies. From late 2017 to the present, we've had brick and mortar and corporate bankruptcies that are continually rising. This tells us that we are headed to a complete and utter disaster, because if we go back in time and we look what happened during the Great Recession, during that period, we see these same exact signs. Now, in Manhattan, we talked about the commercial real estate for retail, where that is imploding. There's, strips where there are no stores whatsoever. Manhattan home sales right now, they fell the most since 2009. Condos, co-ops, they fell by 25% in the first quarter of 2018 compared to the first quarter of 2017. And we know that this is not from the tax-related bill that Trump put forth, because in 2017, we saw sales volume drop, which then means that if that is falling, it means the sales in 2018 are not going to be there. This has nothing to do with taxes whatsoever. So when we start to look at the economy, we can see that everything, think about the number of indicators that we have been looking at. Think about the number of different economic sectors we've been looking at, and each one is declining right now. Even the global debt has hit a record of $237 trillion. It's up $21 trillion in 2017. Think about this for a second. We're at a point where this system is going to basically come to a screeching halt, and it's just going to implode. The global GDP is over 327%. Now, according to the latest quarterly update, the IIF has calculated the global debt rose another $4 trillion in the past quarter to a record $237 trillion, like we just mentioned, and more than $70 trillion higher from a decade earlier, and up roughly $20 trillion in 2017 alone. The central bankers, they understand that they can't put on any more debt. Even here in the United States, they can continually do it, but what happens is each and every country starts to buckle under this debt, and the governments, they start to have problems. They have to put austerity on the people, and that means they have to cut certain programs. That means jobs disappear, which means people aren't bringing in income. If they're not bringing in income, they can't pay taxes. If they don't pay taxes, you can't pay down the debt. This is what we're seeing in Greece. This is what we're seeing in France. This is what we're seeing in Italy. We're seeing it all over the place. This is what we're seeing in the United States. This is why the tax receipts are continually declining. Because as you move forward, even if people get jobs, they're low-paying jobs, and you're not bringing in the same tax base. So the system is buckling under from all of this debt, and it's getting worse as time goes on. And eventually what's going to happen, they will not be able to stop the avalanche of the entire system coming down. Now, the central bankers know this. Trump knows this. They all know this. They all play the game that everything is great and everything's fine. Don't worry about it. In the background, what they're doing is they're preparing to control the narrative. Now, people say, well, what do you mean in the background? Well, what do you think they were doing in 2008 while Bernanke was out there telling you that everything's contained, everything's great? They were preparing to have Congress to say, yes, we will allow a bailout. This was already in the works. While on the news stations and everything else, they were telling everyone that everything was fine, that we're not headed towards any type of recession. They already knew that the subprime securities were garbage. They already knew that all these companies were going to fail. They already knew they were going to need a bailout. These individuals, the central bankers, Wall Street, they already know what is about to happen. They've already prepared for this. Now, governments around the world, especially China and Russia, they've been preparing for a very long time. They've been basically buying as much gold as they possibly can at the price that it is right now, because they know once the system implodes and all the manipulation completely goes away, gold is going to skyrocket. And they know this. Now, China and Russia, they are working to move away from the dollar. And they made this perfectly clear. We know Beijing right now, well, they're looking to dump their treasuries, which they are doing. And the other thing is, they are not buying any other treasuries. They put a halt to this. So they're holding steady, and they're going to dump. And we can see right now, they understand they need to get rid of their treasuries, and it doesn't make sense for them to purchase any more at this point in time. Russia is considering dropping the dollar, which they're going to do eventually, and the euro, and they're going to trade with Iran and Turkey and any other country would like to trade with them using their own currency. Now, think about this for a second. We know that Venezuela, we know that Libya, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and any other country, we know once they take control of their countries and the puppet government is not calling the shots, they will decide what currency they will sell their oil for. Venezuela has already decided it will not be the dollar. Once the U.S. troops are removed from the Middle East, these countries will decide, well, we don't want to use the dollar. Most likely they will go to Russia or China, probably the petro yuan. Russia is already making the move to say, listen, if we need oil from Turkey or Iran, we will use our currencies. There is no reason to use a third party. It makes no sense at this point. So right now, Russia and China, they are slowly shifting the global economy towards the East. This was pre-planned a long time ago. And every time they make these type of announcements, every time they make these moves, is another indicator to let you know the economy is coming down, because they're pre-positioning themselves and they're getting ready for what is about to happen here. And they know what's going to happen. They know that the entire system is going to fall apart and the dollar is going to be absolutely worthless. So here we are. The transition is already happening. It's been happening every single day. Every time they make these announcements, this is a sign that the transitioning is happening. You can pretend it's not happening. You can also go back in time and say, yeah, China is never going to have the yuan in the SDR basket with the IMF, but they did. You can go back in time and say, yeah, China is not going to have a petro yuan, but they have it now. You can say the petro yuan is not going to be backed by gold, which they are doing right now. You can say China is not going to have manufacturing. Well, they have that. You can say China is not going to have the Belt and Road, which they're building, because the TPP and the TTIP is going to be the trading platform that all the countries are going to use. Well, that didn't come true. And yes, China is building the Belt and Road. The system is being shifted right now. Trump, Xi Jinping, Russia, they're all in on it. They're all setting it up for the move. And we could see already today that Trump was out there thanking Xi Jinping for not exporting Chinese cars, because that would have demolished the manufacturing base here in the United States. And it looks like China might be importing U.S. cars. Now again, the United States is going to need this, because when the system comes down, we will need to bring in manufacturing export as much as we possibly can, join the Belt and Road, and it looks like they're already preparing to do this. This is what this is all about. So what we're seeing is a major transition happening right now, and it's going to continue on. And every time we see these announcements, it means we're getting closer and closer. So you better get ready, you better get prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.